You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 97. My name is Clark from 5Card Guys on Instagram and 5cardguys.com. And with me as usual is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess. Okay, so off the top, I know this sale happened a week ago, but I want to quickly discuss the $3.12 million sale of the Luka Doncic National Treasures Logoman, which includes the buyer premium, so it's 2.6 plus the buyer's premium. John, congratulations, you guessed 3.1 million when we recorded our episode with Will a couple of weeks ago, so congrats.
Yeah, baby. Where's my prize?
But it'll come later. Will's got something for you. Okay. Well, now the sale, in terms of the hobby, puts Luka in the same category essentially as Michael Jordan rookie cards and LeBron James rookie cards. So just wanted to ask you guys what you think of that. You know, is it a little too confident by the buyer, thinking Luka will be that multi-championship caliber player like MJ and LeBron? Or yes, Luka is the man and definitely commands these kind of dollars in today's hobby. What do you think?
This one's a little tough because I think it could be too high, but it could also be a steal.
Right.
We could look like idiots in 2 years, or we could look like geniuses in 2 years, right?
50-50 chance.
I will say this is it was a record for public auction. Right. So this card actually sold for more a year or two years ago in a private sale for over 4 million something.
4.6?
Yeah, so it's on a retraction of whatever that is, right? Like 30% or whatever. So I think it could have been a good buy, but because then, you know, they end up selling it. If Luka ends up becoming, you know, the player that everybody thinks that he can be, what's the next price point, right? So I mean, it's a big gamble, the bottom line, because but at the same time, you look at like Jordan. If Jordan had like a National Treasures 1-of-1 Logoman, what would that go for? The problem is you don't have the rarity that is created artificially with cards in nowadays. So I think it could kind of misrepresent kind of like the pricing, because MJ should be worth more, obviously, but he might not have the card to kind of like push that agenda, right? So, yeah, I think obviously it's a strong sale, and it's a very good sign in a hobby or in a market that's kind of on a bearish run. So yeah. I'm happy with the sale as a hobbyist. I think somebody again overpaid, but in a couple years, or let's just say that card never surfaces again, and in 5-10 years, we're going to be talking about this on episode 2956. We're going to
steal.
Yeah, what a steal. So it's one of those for me.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
Johnny.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to think. I think if you're playing in that space and you're spending that kind of money, I would bet money on comments and people who are talking. They're gonna say, "Oh, look at this idiot. He spent way too much money. Luka's not even proven." I get that he's like sexy and he's like on his way to superstardom, but he hasn't won anything yet. He hasn't proven. How could you spend this money? I'd rather spend it on LeBron. I get all that. But if you're in that space and you're ready to spend $3, $5, $10 million on a card, like on a grail card, something that nobody else would have, right? You're going to chase like a Mickey Mantle, or I guess you're going to chase a LeBron exquisite. if you're in that space and you maybe 3 million is a drop in the bucket, I don't, as much as this might be an expensive sale and the guy might have gone a little bit crazy, if I was sitting in that person's shoes, I'd probably do it too, because, I love Luka. I want to be staring at the card that I want to stare at and I want to enjoy. Collect what you love. And he'd probably like, Luka's my favorite player to watch right now, and this is what I want. And it's a grail of a guy that looks to me, even from my opinion, like he seems generational all the way. And I think most of the market would agree that Luka is generational. Not only that, he's likable and he's popular and he's marketable. Like, he's got all of the above. And, he hasn't won anything yet. I get it. He hasn't won championship. He hasn't won MVPs, but we all think that he's on his way. And I think the marketing is there enough for Luka right now. I don't know if in the future, but I don't think it's that bad, man. I really don't. As crazy as that sounds.
I think like one commenter wrote, there's like 3 championships baked into that price, right? He's got to win.
Yeah,
he's got to win.
I probably agree with that. Yeah, he's got to win.
But one thing I will say is that I think Luka is kind of the face of the modern hobby for basketball, particularly. But I think that might be a factor where if Luka does win those championships, and then everyone in the hobby knows who Luka is, I think that could push prices really to ridiculous levels. I'm saying that compared to like Giannis,
right?
He's already won MVP back to back, or I don't know if it's back to back, but he's won twice, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, he's not a huge hobby chase guy. Do you know what I mean? Right. I might be wrong. Like, his cards are certainly not cheap, but man, if it's a Giannis Logoman versus a Luka Logoman will outsell Giannis every day.
For sure.
Right?
It's crazy.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think the fact that Luka is popular both in the NBA as well as the hobby it works in his favor in terms of future card value. Mm-hmm. Just my thought.
Until he does a movie.
Hey,
Space Jam 3?
Stay out the acting.
LeBron's card is still worth something, all right?
I don't know. But yeah, Luka's gonna have to win. I think that's the perfect thing. It's like it's baked. 3 championships are baked, and that's the we expect that. And if he succeeds in that, then $3 million is a steal, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and you know what? To his credit, he's playing lights out this season, right? So we'll see. We'll see how
PSA
the Mavs
10
do.
prisms hold.
Man, that card just keeps fluctuating up and down, but I am holding. I got one. All right, let's move on to hobby headlines. So for today, I thought we could discuss the topic of grading again. More specifically, I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of new grading companies coming into the hobby, namely Tag. They set up a booth at the recent Sports Card Expo here in Toronto, and I was pretty impressed. I think, Johnny, you were pretty impressed as well. And also Arena Club, who I did an interview with in a recent podcast episode. I want to ask, what do you think grading companies in general need to do to get a sizable market share and compete with the big 3 right now, which is PSA, Beckett, and SGC, I would include. I'll throw CSG in there as well, top 4. But first, do you guys have any initial thoughts on Tag or Arena Club, Slabs, or as a grading company?
I personally, I think it's like they're an upcoming company that presents really well. I think they've had nothing but positive reviews, and this is where I believe like any company could kind of hop into this space right now, because we are in a recession. We're entering a recession. It's not going to stop. So this is where new companies form, companies that like to innovate, companies that like to better the market. And that's what we're seeing, right? So I know everybody says PSA is king, and they have a lot of like vintage, but in pre-90s, PSA didn't exist, right? So I'm saying that, PSA has to also keep up You know, you look at the blockbusters, you know, what Netflix did to Blockbuster. If you don't want to adapt when there's big recessions, because these are paradigm shifts in society, right? So for me, a company like Tag, who's really upping the game in terms of the digital technology, like we said, it can't be subjective the way grading is. That has to be those issues have to be faced and resolved. It's going to make the industry better. It's going to make more sense in the long run. And that's where our society is going, whether you like it or not. So I think there's a great opportunity for these grading companies. And you're kind of seeing it where, you know, even SGC is kind of taking over BGS in terms of an SGC 10. That's a certain card versus a BGS 9.5. You know, it's gaining ground and outselling them even in most instances. Sure. So you're seeing a big shift in that because people will eventually realize true value and they would put their money long term where it makes the most sense. So if you're seeing, let's just say, a Tag card that's undervalued, but you know in the long run it's properly graded and it's a for sure 10, eventually those markets will correct itself, whether it takes 5, 10, 15 years, and obviously dependent on those companies that end up kind of like forming from it, like Tag. So I think there's right now is that opportunity. As we head into this recession, you're basically shaking off all the people that aren't in it for the right reasons, right? And that's what you're going to see, even the hiccups with PSA, you know, all those things with subjective grading. All those things are going to, you know, expose them to basically these companies that are doing it for the right reasons. Yes, they're not going to win the market share right away, in my opinion. It's going to take a lot of time. And we've seen that, you know, throughout the last couple of years. PSA was totally king, but now it's like SGC didn't even exist really, you know, 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, in terms of being in the game, right? But as these companies get better at what they do, make it more available where you're giving value, because essentially you're in business because you're providing those solutions to the problems, right? And if you're not focused on that in the long run, right, you're going to end up getting caught with your pants down, which you look at like the Blockbusters, you look at all these companies that didn't want to adapt to kind of like the new norms, right? So
yeah, makes sense.
Right.
Any initial thoughts, John?
I don't own Arena Club in specific because I haven't seen the slab yet. I haven't really looked it up. I did listen to our podcast that you had interviewed the, I forgot what position he was in, the vice president or whatever.
Business development.
Which sounded really interesting. Tag, on the other hand, we got to see the booth. I didn't get to actually hold the slab in hand, but man, it looks sharp. Like, they look great. Very intriguing. And I think these companies, especially with Tag, they seem to have done a really good job of capturing, getting that competitive advantage by capturing some of the gaps that these existing companies have, right? We can talk about, you know, like basically what the hobby's kind of complained about, right? Like, I don't like looking at 9.5, even though you consider it a gem. I want people to write 10s. I don't like that the Beckett holders have like sharp corners. I want kind of like rounded, nice corners. Maybe I don't really like it that PSA's slab is a little bit light, you know, so you kind of make a more thicker, more solid feeling slab. I don't like the fact that PSA doesn't reveal like how they graded. So you create a grading scheme, or you create a grading report specifically on that card, all of that stuff. So like, I think all those gaps that these existing companies have, these up and coming companies have to. That's number one. You got to find a competitive advantage somehow for your product. So I feel like Tag has really done a good job of like capturing some of the really big pain points, especially the accountability part, where like, how did you come up with this grade? Please tell me where you saw what. And apparently, like, Hyung, I didn't get a chance to look at it, but Hyung, you said the reports for Tag, like, they're individual reports per card, like really sharp, like really well done.
Really well done, yeah.
Love seeing that stuff. Like, I think that's gonna really hold well for Tag and their start within the space. For the existing companies like Beckett, SGC, it's a little bit tougher. I think CSG did a pretty good job of making a bit of a comeback with like the
New labels.
The new label, thank you. And then apparently also their slabs are like the sharpest on the market. They come out crystal clear, like no smudging, no scratches. I heard they're beautiful. So in a way, CHG captured some of that, favoritism within the market. But it's going to be tough, man, for the existing companies. Really, they're kind of in a space where they can't kind of necessarily innovate, because you can't grandfather your existing into the new innovation unless you want to just recall all of the slabs. So they're in a tough position where they're kind of just duking it out between pricing and quick delivery and stuff like that. So I think companies like Arena Club Tag, being able to start fresh and being able to address some of these bigger concerns that the hobby has had, I think they're in a really good position to make some noise.
Yeah. It's funny, all those complaints you just mentioned about like where Tag is taking advantage of them, they all sound like John's past complaints.
For sure.
It's all coming from, it's very personal, it sounded like. But those 9.5s, holy smokes. I don't know how many times.
Oh, you know what, even that. Does Tag's label, is it laser etched? It is, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, like even that's a big one, man, because I know like, remember my Chris Paul SGC, like the label would slip and fall into the card. I know that's been an issue with Beckett. The perforated edges makes it look like this cheap paper cutout. Like all of that stuff. I think they listen to all of the hobby. Yeah. Good job.
Even the case itself, or the slab itself, I think Brian Dennison, who we interviewed on this podcast, he tried to crack one out of the Tag slab. And it just like cracked right down the middle. Like it's not built the same way as PSA or Beckett.
Where you can easily kind of manipulate it and
like you. I mean, Hyung's a cracking king, right? So like when you
have
cut
to
the
wear
corners.
goggles. When I crack it, we're in operation. We're in surgery.
So apparently the Tag slabs are built a little differently, so you got to be a little careful with that. But before I get into what I think, like, do you think there's any lessons that could be learned from, grading companies like HGA? Remember those guys? They didn't fare so well.
They still, I guess, have their clientele and fan base. So I guess I don't think they're going to be a huge player in the game. But like, you look at all these companies, HGA, FCG, they're all trying to do something that makes them stand out, and I think that's what's making these new companies come up, because they take implementing things that are needed in the hobby. And this is what we discussed earlier in the podcast, like earlier episodes, that these companies are going to end up pushing for the better kind of like technology to better the hobby, right? So I like it. And I didn't speak on Arena Club, and I wasn't a original, I guess, huge fan of Arena Club, where I'm kind of on it. But I see the potential. I see, the space of what they're trying to do. I guess PSA is doing the same thing, in terms of having a whole in-house service. You could vault your card. You could grade your card there. You could send your raw cards, and they'll take care of the rest. You can manage your portfolio. You create your store. It's a marketplace. So they're trying to implement that. And like I said, it goes back to how these companies are trying to better the hobby by solving these solutions, or solving these problems, and coming up with easy, logical solutions that the user can basically use through their phone, right? Through technology, essentially. So I think it's all great though. Like I said, I'm all for it. I'm all for these companies, trying to make it better, because this is how we evolve and grow as a whole hobby. So
do you guys know if PSA always had a stranglehold on the hobby? That wasn't always the case, right? Like
remember it was pre-90s. Yeah, pre-90s, Beckett and SGC. SGC was the king of vintage.
SGC, right? Vintage.
Right. So it's kind of coming back around. PSA is relatively new to the hobby, right? And those PSA old slabs were hideous too to begin with. So
right.
You know what I mean? All the way up till 2019, I guess. whenever they came up with the new slabs. But yeah, PSA is a relatively new company. That's what people forget.
And how did they get the market share that they have now?
I believe the mantles.
The mantles.
I want to say the mantles helped them a lot, or just getting into that game because. And then there's a whole different story. It's a rabbit hole. I don't know if you guys want to go down that rabbit hole with trimmed cards and all that.
Right,
yeah, which is just a headache, right?
The Derek Jeter upper deck.
Yeah, so that's where PSA was also popular and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Right.
not saying good or bad, just throwing it out there. It's
Right.
yeah.
Well, going back to your original question, Clark, about learning lessons for some of these companies that quote unquote might have failed, like HGA. I think if you're a new company coming in, you certainly, the big advantage these existing companies have is obviously manpower at this point, right? So I think you have to quickly be able to, and it's no easy task, but be able to handle expectations and volume. I think that's a big one that really kills. I mean, it even killed PSA, but it certainly killed some of the smaller brands. And then this is where the big advantage comes for the existing companies is authentication. So like the head graders at these companies have been in this for a long time, looking at authenticating autographs, looking at the history behind certain cards and how you authenticate if they're real or not, some vintage cards, etc., etc. Some of these new companies might have pretty good experienced graders, but may not be experienced overall in the hobby and know some certain nuances. So I think they have to be really careful. And they have been. I think some of these companies say right off the bat, like, we only grade modern because that's what we know. We unfortunately don't know vintage. We're not going to go down a space we don't know. So I think that's the right steps to take, because clearly some companies, they didn't take that into account and just kind of took on everything. And look what happened with especially like HGA. They got burned by grading fake cards, and that was almost like a nail in the coffin for them, right? So
yeah, that's a really good point. I put that as a point for myself as well. Like, maybe certain grading companies are better suited for niche cards or like a certain subset of cards, So I think that's not a bad play. Like trying to grade everything at the same time, and like you were saying, to your point, John, you authenticate a fake card, that's gonna be a huge blow for your grading company, right? And yeah, and the reason why I brought up the point about whether PSA was always king, like for people new to the hobby, they just assume that PSA has always been number one.
Right.
But BGS, like I grew up with BGS mostly as the predominant slab, right? Predominant grading company that I chased after.
Right.
And then it took me a while for me to get used to PSA. And I think the reason why, honestly, I still like BGS slabs, the look of it better. But the reason why I like PSA 10s is just the value that it commands, the premium of PSA 10s. I wonder if that's something that grading companies have to try to figure out too. Like, how do they get their slabs worth equal to or close to equal to like the PSA 10s or the Beckett 9.5, you know what I mean? Like the big three.
Right.
Because
how do they get that brand image up?
I think that's going to happen over years of like true value correcting itself. So it's like when people realize, wait a minute, like there's so many PSA 10s out here or something like that. And then they're like, why is SGC selling for half, PSA 10? Those ebbs and flows are going to kind of go, and then we're going to go through those cycles of correction, just like we're seeing correction right now with everything kind of like correcting to where it is. It's like in the long run, over year after year after year, people are going to realize, wait a minute, is there true value for PSAs, especially bulk submission, for instance? Is that going to eventually be their demise? Whereas it might not be worth grading some cards, and that might be fact, right? And we keep it at a higher price point where it doesn't devalue the brand in the long run, right? So, yeah, I think, eventually I think it's going to catch up because people will see through true value. right?
Yeah.
We're all a value shoppers too. If we see a deal on like, you know, a BGS 9.5 True Gem and it's going for like 30% of a PSA 10, right? And, you know, it's a no-brainer. You know what you're getting, right? You could deal with, I'd take, you know, 30% comps off that or whatever. What I think is equal. They're same card, right? If not, maybe better. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Do you guys think so? That's a great point. Like in studying brand image and brand power. Obviously, PSA's brand power it took a while. Like you don't just get that overnight. But when I study somebody like SGC, they were always known and they had a brand image of being the king of vintage. But to me, they chased the money, which I don't blame them. They killed it. Like this last 18 months, I'm sure their numbers and their financials just skyrocketed, right? So good for them. Kudos. They made the money. Mm-hmm. But their brand image now, to me, like, do you guys still call SGC king of vintage? I don't. Right? Like their
I would
brand,
respect it. I would
right,
respect
but
it.
You probably wouldn't submit like your awesome vintage cards with SGC because they're the king of like that. I think that image is out the window. I feel like their image is now discount brand speedy service. I think that's more of the in line with the image.
But what do you think drives prices originally?
For what? The card
like
value?
like why would SGC sell or why would PSA? How did PSA get the market share?
Right. It had
what
to.
Do you
I mean,
think?
to me, it all starts with how good they are at grading or perceived at how good they are at grading. I'm sure that was sort of the baseline in the original sense, right? But
once the marketing took over, because obviously PSA, if that's not the same sentence as right now, because we could say Tag or FCG grades better than PSA, but they don't have close enough market share or price points.
Right.
So like that can't be the driving factor. Who's the best? I think that was.
It was. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
Right. But now it's there's layers and layers and layers of competitiveness within these products, right, and brands. So it takes a lot more for your brand to build a certain image or a certain, like image, basically an image within the hobby, right? But SGC for me, it's a very interesting study because I really think they potentially might have devalued their brand.
Interesting.
They're sitting there with wads of cash and probably laughing at me, which is fine. But I think their brand image might have taken a different turn. Maybe it's a good thing for them. Maybe it's not. Like, I don't know. But I wouldn't necessarily call them like king of vintage anymore, right?
I'll agree with you, John. Like when I look for cards to post on, my daily auctions page, the highest value ones are always PSA and BGS second. And then, I'll type in SGC. The most expensive cards on auction that day, like sometimes I'll hit 1,000. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not there yet. Like not a lot of collectors that have high value raw cards are submitting to SGC right now.
So that was my point. What's that difference between why does PSA and BGS have that? In my opinion, it's those record sales.
Right.
It goes back to the marketing,
100%,
right?
that's
so
marketing.
It's like, but that's where SGC will hold strong because of, like, for instance, the Mano. That 9.5 Mano that sold for 12.1 million.
Oh,
at the end of the day, it's
100.
SGC
Yeah, that's
slab.
a huge sale for them.
That was a big
the
win.
moment Tag sells a $10 million card, right? That's when we're talking, I guess, in terms of marketing share. That's going to drive basically value. And I believe that's what every grading company kind of did early on when they did start. And I seen it with FCG, for instance. They got the Bobby Witt, orange refractor in an FCG slab, because when hopefully that Bobby Witt Jr. sells for a record-breaking price, it becomes a marketing, big marketing for FCG, and proven that they're selling at premiums. So I think that's where PSA rode the wave, was with the Charizard hollows, like the Pokemon. That's all you've seen, and it was just constant record-breaking sale, PSA 10 this, PSA 10 that. You know, what's the standard PSA 10 value? Because they see those selling all the time, right? So I think it stems from sales, especially record-breaking sales, right? And we don't see as many SGC record-breaking sales as we do PSA or even BGS, right? So.
Right. And let's not forget, I think I probably mentioned this before, I'll bet you anything, the fact that PSA decided to use the number 10 as their gem had something to do with eventually starting to, right? Because SGC had 98, 98, and then BGS has 95, right? And PSA was like one of the first major brands to go with a solid 10, right? I think that probably, in terms of marketing and image and fickleness within the hobby collectors, I'm sure it had something to do with them starting to climb ahead.
Yep, Johnny's mentioned that many times before on this podcast. We know he's passionate about the 10s, over
man,
the 9.5s.
Just don't do the 9.5s. That's a big mistake to me.
Do you believe in the conspiracy that PSA 10s, you know how we joke that you could get a PSA 10 or it could be a PSA 8 or 7. But I think that's why some collectors like submitting to PSA because, hey, you never know. It might be a 10, which will prop its value. Whereas this new technology, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little nervous that it's going to be really hard to get 10s with tag and all these, you know, AI algorithmic grading services. Like there's got to be a range. I don't think that's being... I think there needs to be more education on that. Like what gives Tag or Arena Club even or FCG, all the ones that use computers to help grade, like what will give it a 10? Like does it have to be perfect? Because the perception right now with PSA 10 is just human graders. And you could find one that had a really good day today and then he's just giving 10s out left, right, and center. Right. You know? So I don't know. Am I overthinking it? Do you think I'm overthinking this?
No, I think
there's a fear to that for sure. Yeah.
But I think though that's the correction that I'm talking about. Like these are the things during any paradigm shift of any industry, we go into totally new, you know, industry where the hobby's going. I think these are things that eventually will catch up to PSA. We're just in it right now until we see it and zoom out. That's when I think we're going to eventually see the correction coming and true value of other companies will show and it will take us into kind of like the new hobby. Yeah.
Or PSA's got to adapt and you know, start being more transparent. That's the other option for them. So we'll see. This is probably going to be go ahead.
I got a bunch of PSA 10s. Remember we talked about that I'm very happy about. So keep those 10s.
He's back on.
Keep those 10s coming.
And this is why new grading companies are just almost impossible to get a foothold. PSA is like, guys, we're losing market share. Pump out those 10s. Just pump them out right now.
Yeah.
Beckett's like, you know what? We can't be so stingy on these BGS 10s. Let's start pumping those out too.
Yeah.
You know what? It's a funny balance. I think people want true, proper grading. So I'm sure AI is going to solidify that. But at the same time, people want fair grading. They don't want I don't want a PSA 8 because like the card looks perfectly centered, no whitening corners, edges look great, but it's a PSA 8. Why? Because there's like 4 microscopic scratches that you can't see with the naked eye. Like that's not a fair grade to like an average person because the card looks perfect, right? So I think that the algorithm, kind of like what PSA does, like 60-40 centering and all that stuff, like the algorithm has to be pretty fair for some of these newer companies that are using these computer software programs. I think if it's fair, that's gonna be well received rather than being like super sharp and 100% accurate. And it only grades a 10 if it's like absolutely insanely perfect. Like I don't think that's what people are looking for. So yeah, there's gonna be a little bit of a fine balance to play there.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Hopefully someone from Tag or Arena Club or those newer grading companies are listening and implement that into their strategy moving forward. Okay, well, we know it's going to be a super competitive space, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. We'll revisit this in a future episode. All right, let's move on to our next segment we're calling Overrated, Underrated. And for this particular segment, it'll be a hobby tech theme. So I'll list a few things, and you guys tell me if you think it's overrated or underrated, all kind of related within hobby tech. Okay, so the first one, CardLadder. Very popular app, website service. Overrated or underrated?
I'm gonna say underrated. I love CardLadder. It's such a great app. I just wish, they had more data. Where it's very selective. They don't have data on everything, but this is what I'm talking about. That you use technology to be able to pull up data so that you could work quicker, you could do other things quicker. It betters whatever problem you're dealing with. It basically provides that solution. I don't think it's perfect. I like that there's a free trial, but I don't like that it's a paid service either. Right? I think there's other ways to monetize it where they could let that whole card ladder for free and monetize it in different ways, whether it's add-ons or whatnot or whatever it may be. But I think I really like the app, and I'm all for kind of like something like CardLadder to pull up fast data when you need it. So underrated.
Yeah. I'm going to say the same. If you're not using CardLadder, it's a really great tool. It, again, like Hyung said, it's not perfect. They're missing a lot of big cards, like especially if you're like a hockey fan. I don't think that CardLadder has much in hockey, so that's probably a bit of a pet peeve in user experience. But that's also goes back to competitiveness, right? Like if CardLadder doesn't quickly figure out how to continually upload that amount of data onto their system, like I'm sure somebody else will figure it out. But CardLadder certainly has a leg up because they've kind of become the brand in this space of like looking up card values. Clearly their app is probably number one by far and away. So they have a big leg up, but I think they got to continue to keep up with the demand and the data that's in there and the number of cards and the different type of cards. I think they got to continue to figure out how to get that on there.
Yep, I'm gonna make it a CardLadder sweep. I'm a subscriber, and I've used Market Movers by Sports Card Investor, and CardLadder is definitely still the best in market. And like you guys say, there's some improvements that need to be made, but I think they're definitely way ahead of the game in terms of the competitors in the same space. So CardLadder, very underrated, easy tool to use. Maybe the app needs to be a little bit better on like the phone, but on the website, on my laptop, I prefer to use it there. Definitely more visual and easier to use. So yeah, that's CardLadder. Second one, I wrote down Digital Card Showcase, and that's from the Arena Club interview that I had, and I thought it was fairly unique what they're trying to do, which is if you use their vaulting service, you could also display the cards that you have on their display showcase, which is digital. So it's kind of like your own homepage, and you could categorize them however way you want. Like, this is my PC, these are my grail cards, these are my high-end cards, low-end cards, and then it's just for anyone to just kind of look online, and then they could easily buy it if they want to or trade with you, that kind of thing. But this whole idea of a digital card showcase with cards that you own in their vault.
Underrated. I think this is the innovation that we're talking about that is needed. Like I said, it's probably not going to be perfect, and the true hobbyist probably will not agree, but this is where the hobby's going, and it's gonna all go digital one day, but there's gonna obviously be physical attachments to it where, I could not worry about it. Could be vaulted, I don't have to ever worry about it, but I could still enjoy my cards, for instance, and I could move my cards, they're liquid, it's all, in one hub basically. So I think they're onto something. I really do. But I obviously think the hobby hasn't caught up yet in terms of the whole digital side of things. So I think it's just a matter of time. But these are those tiptoes that get you kind of further and further along the line of innovation and development of markets.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't necessarily say it's overrated because there's nothing to overrate right now. So it's going to by default go underrated. But I think the technology, for me, the digital, like the simple concept of showing off your cards, it's not, to be honest, it's not that intriguing to me. But when I listened to that interview, for me, the trading concept, being able to trade with no fees, that is, to me, I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting in terms of vaulting and showcasing. So I think for the showcase part, I think the trading element is going to be really big. Like, it could be a big potential leg up for Arena Club. And then also, more than just, like, let's say Hyung has his showcase online and I get to like click on his profile and view it. I don't think that's really a big thing, but in the future, if there's online card shows and you can just one click away feature table, and it's almost like you're virtually walking through a show, and I can click on Hyung's featured table at the show and look to buy or trade off of his table. I think that concept in the future could be excellent, but the simple just showcasing your cards, I think it's okay, but the trading element and future like digital card shows, and using that showcasing technology, I think that could be a big winner.
Yeah, and I like that point because when I was talking to Warren from Arena Club, I think he was mentioning that point where the digital card showcase and the whole idea of making it sound like a card show, it works hand in hand,
right?
So like it's like you're able to trade, you're able to buy, you're able to sell to people that use that platform.
Right. So he did mention that. Maybe I listened to it and subconsciously just repeated it.
You're a genius, John. You should work for Arena Club. No, I thought it was a great idea, and I love the $0 trading fees as well. You brought that up too.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, I think it's not going to be for everyone. Some people want to hold their slabs, but I think if they made it easier for you to like send it to yourself whenever you want, and then you can send it back. If they made that process a little bit more seamless, I think there'll be more adoption for something like this. Just my point of view. All right, next thing, Center Stage. It's an app. I'm not sure if you guys heard of it, but what it does is, just say you go to a live card show, you can bring up this app, and then it scans the card, and then it gives you the details of the card.
I'm going to say underrated too. I'm bullish on technology, so anything that helps the end user, with data or speed of any problem. Again, it's same thing. This is what we talk about all the time. So I got to say underrated. This is expected, and I expect better apps to come out where it's going to improve the hobby. And so I say it's underrated as well. I think I haven't used it personally, but I see where they're going, and I know that. I remember somebody using it, and it brought up the info pretty quick, which a lot of people, especially if they're new into the hobby, they struggle with. But yeah, I think it's only good for the hobby for sure.
Right. Okay.
Doesn't Sports Card Investor kind of mimic this technology as well? I think their app had some sort of feature like Center Stage.
I think so, maybe. Yeah.
I've never used it myself, but I'm going to say underrated too. I'm with Hyung in all of these showcases of any of these technologies. I think it just continues to make the hobby easier and accessible, and better and quicker and more efficient. I'm all for it. Does it? What kind of details does it pop up? Like a pop report or something like that?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I think in the future, and I don't know if they've already done this, but if it can start to gather all of the information that's out there, how like PSA on certain slabs, if they'll record how many times like the PSA 10s have sold. Like here's a listing of all the PSA 10s of certain cards. I think if they take that information, they take like 130 point information, because, you know, as eBay sales expire, you lose all of that information, right? So I think if something like Center Stage were to come out and you could find, it'd be amazing for the card to pop up and let's say even that serial numbers in specific and the history of that serial number, like how many times this card is traded, when it's sold, and like that card specifically, when it's sold, on what days, in its history since it got slabbed. I think something like that, if somebody can figure that out, would be fantastic.
Great idea. I think, Johnny, you should be on it. I think this will make you.
He's part of the R&D.
Yeah.
Hey, a suggestion. While you're there and asking for the research and development, tell him to do a raw card review too. Give me the pre-PSA 10s.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what the cameras these days? Yeah. It's
Yeah,
possible,
absolutely.
for sure.
Why not?
Yeah. I think it's underrated. I like the whole concept of it. The only problem is we all know live card shows, poor Wi-Fi, poor cell reception. So I don't know how well something like this works at all times, but I know that was one of the complaints with just apps in general, I guess. So, all right. Lastly, Whatnot live streaming. You know, this is becoming a bigger thing, especially with Whatnot capturing this market, but there's a lot of other tech apps that are trying to get into this live streaming breaking space. Right. Do you think this is going to be a bigger thing?
Sorry, is this underrated or overrated, or is it?
Yeah, underrated, overrated.
Okay, this one, I can't speak a lot for Whatnot. I know they've reached out to me personally as well, just wanted to sell me on it, but like I don't know how much I'm bullish on like that side of things, but it's kind of like the same thing where I'll see the potential and it's gonna better the hobby for it, but longevity in terms of is breaking the way we're doing it right now gonna be the way we do it in the future? I don't know. So that could totally change a lot of things too, right? So if that's their basic, you know, business strategy or the reason why they exist, I'm not as bullish as like, let's just say collecting data, for instance, a company that collects data and then just spits it out, as opposed to something that's for breaking. It's like, well, if breaking changes the way we do breaking, will that affect Whatnot? I'm sure they would have to pivot then, right? So, but again, it's these are new companies that are kind of like testing the waters to see if, you know, there's a marketplace for it, and right now there is. So, but I'm gonna say overrated.
How about if it wasn't just for breaking, but like you can sell? You know how some of the collectors out there use Whatnot to sell their product.
Before you get to that, how does, new question, because I obviously don't use Whatnot, nor have I watched any of the influencers, anybody even like been a part of breaks or anything like that. So how does Whatnot work exactly? Do you guys know?
I think basically you schedule a time and you kind of promote that, like at 3:00 I'm going to be doing a huge sale of my cards,
right?
And then
it's kind of like an Instagram live.
They go into your channel, exactly, right? And then Whatnot helps you sell the card on the back end. Like anyone that clicks on it, they could pay through, I believe, through the Whatnot app. So all the financial stuff is done within the app as well. And then all you got to do is kind of like submit it and then ship it out afterwards. But to keep all that selling data on the app for you.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like marrying PayPal and IG in like a one-stop shop.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good. I'm gonna say underrated. Yeah, and it's simply for the fact that it's kind of like a new technology. There's nothing to really overrate, so I'll say underrated. It's you know, Whatnot has been criticized, maybe completely unfairly, because of the way that some of the marketing has been going out, and there's a lot of haters talking about, oh, they're just like throwing money here and there, and these influencers are all fake. Like there's a lot of like seemingly there's a lot of hate out there, and Whatnot is receiving a lot of that hate for probably no good reason. But I'll say underrated. Again, kind of going back to all this like tech talk. Like I think as these companies figure out innovative ways to reach hobbyists, consumers, and make it more efficient and make it easier to access, I think I'm all for that stuff.
Yep. I see the potential of Whatnot. I think, though, it's slightly overrated right now because if you're not an influencer or if you don't have a huge following, you could get burned on some of these sales. Like, I think it's binding or something like that. It's kind of like eBay. Like if you post it and someone buys it, then you gotta sell it. And I might be wrong, but like I think it, even if I'm not, like, you'll have a hard time selling your cards if you're not a huge influencer. Do you know what I mean? You need someone to tune into your channel, and I think Whatnot's trying to get that market share, like more people on it, more eyeballs, and I think it's a work in progress. I think they're heading in the right direction, but right now as it is, it's I believe more useful for influencers or for collectors that have bigger followings. Yeah, I think generally speaking, though, all three of us are really bullish on the different hobby tech that's available now and that it's being worked on. And generally speaking, I think you guys will agree that it can only help the hobby, get better for collectors in terms of collecting and buying and selling. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on the different hobby tech that's in the pipeline too. Okay, with that, let's end this episode with our regular weekly feature we call Pick One. And we're going to do this Pick One a little differently because if you remember, I believe last Friday episode, we had a question from one of our loyal podcast listeners, Sleepy in Seattle. He also asked another question, which we thought we would handle here in this Pick One section. And he asked about the J-Rod card. Okay, and he wanted to know which Julio Rodriguez card is the best, or I don't know, what do we say in Pick One, which one we would rather invest in, right? So there's a lot, and he only gave us 3, but I might throw 1 or 2 more in there just to make it more interesting. But the 3 that he gave us was his 2022 Topps Series 2, which is an SP, and I believe that's the horizontal one, paper, right? The 2022 Topps Chrome Logo Fractor, right? And then the 2022 Topps Chrome SP from the silver pack, and Hyung, I believe you said also
the light
hobby
boxes.
Light boxes
Right.
as well, and that's also an SP, right? So out of those 3, let's start with those 3.
I think for me, it has to be between the refractor SP and the logo fractor. They're similar images, but something with J-Rod that, like, I know there's a lot of variations. We talk about a lot of variations of J-Rod rookie cards, but in Chrome, there's really none. This technically, in Topps Chrome release, you had a horizontal auto. That was the only J-Rod card available. Then the whole debacle of there's no SPs in the hobby boxes, so they started putting them in the silver packs in the hobby light boxes. And right now there's a pop count of I believe I want to say 13 of the refractors of a PSA 10.
Okay.
And then the logo fractor has a PSA 10 pop of, I believe, 5. So we're talking, I think they're a lot more SP than people realize, and the prices dictate. I believe the logo fractor PSA 10 sold for $1,700. Which is pretty low compared to, I guess, the shield bids of the logo fractors that were starting when they went on release. But something like the Series 2 SP, where there's a pop count about 500 of them, and they sell for about $500. I think the better value is in right now the logo fractor, to be honest. And I know a lot of hobbyists didn't like the release of logo fractors. They thought it was another gimmick. But to me, I think that the cards look amazing. It's a super low print run, so it's like a mega box release where I believe they calculated 55,000 boxes total, right? And that's where we've seen the crazy resale value of up to $150 after the fact. And still, you look at eBay and you'll see the logo fractor Julio SP. And I believe it's not even an image variation. It's just the extended SP card where the original logo fractors, there are 110 cards, and then Julio's number 111, and then you have 112, 113, 114 as the other SPs with the other players. So I think we're talking super rare cards here. Like I don't know the exact print count. I could be totally wrong. Maybe somebody has better insight on this, but I'm guessing it's like an SSP, like a white jersey or a Gatorade Soto. Really? Yeah, where it's less than 300 copies, right? So I believe that's the better long-term investment, to be honest.
This is the Topps Chrome SP?
This is both.
But I think the logo... you think the silver pack is also really low?
Really SP'd, yeah. Really short printed. But I rather have the logo fract. I just like that card better. I just think it has so much appeal. And yeah, you can't go wrong with either because there's similar price points, similar pop counts. But I'm if I had to choose one, I'm going logo fractor. But I just thought, there's a lot of insight in that. And on top of that, as much as you think that there's a lot, I think Topps Update is your mass printed Julio Rodriguez base card. So just kind of like Acuna, the US 250 update is kind of like your mass printed base card, and everything else is gonna demand a premium given that Julio Rodriguez continues to do what he does, right? So same with Acuna in 2018 Top Series 2, he had an SP, right? And then he had Topps Chrome, and then the Topps Chrome Sapphire was kind of rare, and then the Topps Update was his mass produce printed card, right? So I find that that's where Julio Rodriguez is. Whether Topps did that intentionally to build like a supply demand monster, I think those SPs are great long-term investments, especially at the price point. They're not bad. I don't see them going down too much just because of the pop count. Maybe on the Topps Chrome side, because there's a lot of silver packs still floating around. There's a lot of light boxes. We have 10 boxes, by the way, here waiting to be ripped. Right. So hopefully we have one of them.
Can't wait.
Here. And 2 logo fractor boxes that we have to rip. And we'll film through 5 Card Guys and Cards to the Moon and all. Integrity Sports Cards. We'll do a little rip with the logo fractors. But anyways, I'm just going on and on. I think that the SPs are great cards overall. I think it's supply demand monster.
So do you guys, before I get to my pick, do you guys feel the flagship image won't hold as much weight anymore?
No. I don't think so.
That's the Topps Update.
SP, yeah. And all of the subsequent sets don't have that image though, right? That is unique to the
and then horizontal paper. Horizontal versus vertical. Right? And I mean, image counts too. So if you look at the bat down Acuna versus his Topps Chrome, nobody likes his Topps Chrome image. Everybody likes the bat down image. So it all depends on what card everybody's kind of like attracted to. And then, but Topps Update becomes the paper parallel. There's no paper parallel. So if you're Independence Day black, a Topps clear, Father's Day, Mother's Day collector, in paper, Topps Update is your only solution to that, right? So it's kind of like a variation of different images, and I know that's the complaint that Julio has many rookie cards, but really it's not too bad. Like it's not as bad as you think because there's scarcity in the rookie cards.
It's so confusing. Oh my gosh.
I'm lost.
Dang. Oh man. So I'm so confused on J-Rod rookie cards. Like I haven't been following, and we joked about this, like when Will pulled his Julio, like the Gatorade bath style SP.
The
like
update.
My first thought. First of all, I had never seen that card at that point, and my first thought was, which card is this? Is that a special card? I don't even know. Like, I was just so confused. There's just so many different images of J-Rod on a Topps product literally within the past 6 weeks. It's right. Pretty insane. I'm really confused right now. I think for me, it was about to be a very easy pick with that original SP, like Series 2, because I was going to go on and on about flagship. But the moment Hyung started talking about Logofractor and Chrome SP and that they might be like SSP, oh man, he might be reeling me the other way. Okay, so I'm gonna. I am intrigued, and I'm gonna actually flip and go to Hyung's side, but I'm gonna pick the Chrome SB because I do like it's the Chrome. We're gonna call it flagship Chrome, even though it's not the flagship image. It is from the silver pack. If it truly is like an SSP, like Hyung might be saying, I think that's gonna be huge. The Logofractor, I'm with Hyung. I think objectively, I think they're beautiful. They look nice. I'm a little scared that it is kind of like Topps saying, Topps created Sapphire, and that was like the hot supply demand monster back in the day. And because it was so incredibly hot, the demand was so crazy, they decided, hey, let's just start printing more of it. And then, whoops, we screwed up Sapphire, and now the Sapphire brand has gone down the drain. We got to create a new supply and demand monster. Here we go. Let's go Logofractor. So for me, I feel like they screwed up the Sapphire brand by printing it too much, and they needed another brand new kind of like new and shiny toy supply demand monster, and they picked Logofractor. So I don't know. Like objectively, I think they're beautiful. I think Hyung is right that they could be a supply demand monster and they could hold value, but I feel like it could be that new shiny toy, and the subsequent years of Logofractors are going to start to wear off, and then it's just going to kind of like overall devalue the brand eventually. So I'm a little bit scared of that. So I'm going to just go straight Topps Chrome. If Hyung is right, and it truly does turn out that SSP, it is like a really rare card, I'm going to go Topps Chrome SP from the silver pack.
All right. Topps Chrome. Hyung's going Logofractor.
I'm going Logofractor.
Yeah, I'm going to go SP.
If you heard Friday's episode, the correct answer is the first Bowman Chrome autograph base.
Yes.
That's the card you go for, and then you just bypass all this confusion of which Topps Chrome.
That's actually a great point.
First Bowman Chrome. But if I had to choose from these three, I'm going to go with the Topps Chrome. I think, just like John said, I like the Logofractor. Like, I personally really think it's sharp. I just don't know how the rest of the hobby will receive it as time goes by. Kind of similar to what John's point was, And yeah, if Topps produces a second edition, because this is a first edition of Logofractor, right? So there might be value in that, because it's the first. But I have no idea if the Sapphire I thought was a good comp, but I don't know if like the first edition of Sapphire still is retaining their value, or if that's plummeted because of what Topps did with subsequent releases. So depending on that, I don't know. But yeah.
I might have something that might change your minds.
Okay. Let's see.
And maybe this might, and maybe this might. So we talked about image variation.
Yep.
Right? So technically I believe the Topps Chrome, from what you guys like, I believe there are color variations. Whereas Logofractor Logofractors don't have color variations because it's extended base SP, meaning it was a 110 card base set in the Logofractors, then 111, 112, 113, 114. Julio being 111, there's no color parallels, which we said SPs shouldn't have a color parallel because if they're already short printed. But I believe the Topps Chrome one, they do have color parallels, numbered color parallels out of it. Not that would change it for you. Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
So you're saying there are color parallels for the Topps Chrome?
You're right.
Rookie.
Right.
I like that. And that's like the Topps Chrome SP is the base card, right? There's no other card.
There's no other card. Yeah.
So I like that. I didn't like that about the Luis Robert year, where he had the base and then you had base color.
Bo Bichette, same thing, right?
But then you also had Luis Robert SP and then also SP in certain colors. I didn't like the colors of the SP. Maybe I just didn't like that image where he looks like, like your fat uncle or something. Like I don't know, the picture where he's throwing the ball and his shirt's kind of puffed out. He looks like a fat uncle. I'm like, I don't like that picture at all. But yeah, I didn't like that. But if this is like, if this is just a singular, this is kind of like the flagship Chrome SP, and then there's numbered parallels. I like that. I'm down.
Oh, so you're not swayed to go logo fractor.
No.
You're staying with chrome.
I'm sticking with for sure. I don't think anything would have swayed me off of the logo fractor. I mean, swayed me onto the logo fractor. It feels too, it feels like they're just too much. They're trying too hard to make it like a new Sapphire. Yeah.
Yeah, it made me think again for sure. This new information, but I just like the image of the Topps Chrome personally too. Slightly better than the logo fractor. I was saying off air, it kind of reminds me of the Acuna white jersey. The paper, just the stance. Yeah. So I like that about it, and it's clean. And the price is actually, I looked at, like, there are a few that sold raw. I think sold for $675, the Chrome SP,
right? Yeah.
Versus the like $750 for the logo fractor.
I do believe there are a lot more SP 222, so Topps Chrome. I'll refer to 222. There's a lot more than the logo fractor. Like just on eBay itself, there's probably 3 times more for sale. So prices are going to be a little cheaper on that. So I guess it's a good kind of like cheap, better, best option. And also we forgot, not that it's part of this card. I think Topps Update, they have an SSP with Ichiro. I think that's a pretty cool card. I think long term, I think it's going to be a monster card as well. So that's also a low print run as well. So that's another image variation of SSP.
It's too many.
That's the paper though. So that would be equivalent to your white jersey Acuna. Right. Because Acuna didn't have that was in paper. That it was an SSP.
Yeah, I'm looking at the card. It's pretty sweet. But you're definitely paying for it. It's almost $1,800 for the SSP of that card, the Ichiro.
Right.
There's just too many.
Yeah, I'm so confused.
I'm gonna do it gives me an idea of I'll do another Instagram reel. I'll try to find all the J-Rod rookie Topps cards and then
and see if somebody can name them all.
Yeah, there'll be a quiz. I'll try to put that together this week. All right. Hope that helped you, Sleepy in Seattle. Once again, thanks for the question. That was a good one. A lot of discussion. So I think John and I are with the Topps Chrome, and Hyung is sticking with the logo fractor in this case, in terms of our pick one. If you want to submit a pick one, again, reach out to us on Instagram at Cards to the Moon, or you could email hello@fivecardguys.com. We check our emails daily. All right, that wraps up this edition of Tuesday's show. As always, we appreciate all our listeners, and if you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, we really like it if you could give us 5 stars and subscribe, and you'll be notified whenever a new episode comes on, which is typically every Tuesday and every other Friday. Until then, we'll see you soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.